All right, who else is, oh, Steve, is that you? I assume when I see the phone sign, it's Steve Levine.
That is me.
Okay, all right. So at least we got him a zooming now, right? All
We
right.
don't even have coffee.
All right, where?
You don't need coffee for the Zoom.
Right, right.
We
Okay.
don't have bread either.
All right. Let's just get, we'll get organized. That's the sicko list. This is the back of the Shmini Atzeres list. We are still in Gemara Beitza. Okay. Yes, we're going to start a new parak today. Okay. And just a reminder for those and online and everybody else that in about 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, we'll be starting Gemara Rosh Hashanah. So we're gonna have to start talking about another siyum.
Right. See him on Rosh Hashanah.
No, on this Gemara, on Beitza, right? Right, Monday the 10th, Monday the 10th of October.
Oh, that's 5 days before my birthday.
Oh, okay. What day is your birthday?
It's Aleph Cheshvan,
Yeah,
on the 15th October.
uh-huh. Okay. That same week, according to this, is the Yom Hilula Shel Rabbi Meir Shapira. All right. You know who he is?
No.
Rabbi Meir Shapira was the one who established the Daf Yomi.
Yeah.
Okay, how are we? Let me just pull out a watch. Someplace I got it here. All right, we got to start. Stop practicing and start because we got a long Gemara. Okay, we're going to start with sponsors and then go right into the text. Okay, Year of Learning, Sue and Arnie Gerlich in memory of Malcolm Perlman and Philip Mann and Yisrael Dev ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, and Yerivka Pro Rosna Bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, and in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bet Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Marsha Federbush and family in memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Federbush, Oriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Liska, their family and many friends in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Elbas Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gitler, Avramea ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler, Cherna Bad Yeshaya, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova Bad Yisrael Dov in her memory. Friends of Malka Levy, Malka Bad Yosef, friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef Ben Chaim, Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata Bat Asher. A Month of Learning by Lynn Rappaport in memory of her husband, Avram Ben Sion Cohen, by Ron and Susan Podolsky in memory of his father, Tzvi Ben Pinchas. A Week of Learning by Ari and Judy Cohen in memory of his mother, Fega Bad Yechiel, and her mother, Hinda Bad Moshe Zachariah Halevi. We have then a Day of Learning by Sarah and Jesse Marilis, in memory of her father, Moshe Binyamin Ben Shlomo Halevi. And Shemlis Heaven Aliyah, Crank Rafiah, Velti Yashir Shemlis Leah, and L'chol B'nai Israel, a good Gebenshtia. Okay, we are going to start with the new parak. We are on Kaf Tet, Amud Beis, towards the very bottom. Right, Hamevi Kade Yayin Mimakom Lamakom, one who is transporting pitchers of wine from one place to another. Lo Yaviam Besal Ubekupa, says the Mishnah, that one should not bring them in a basket or in a box or tub. Okay, so what we're talking about here is shinui, that to do certain kinds of things in Yom Tov, there must be a different methodology than what you do normally on a weekday, because it may look like more commercial activity. Okay, so then the Mishnah continues. Aval mevihu al ktefo o lefanav, but he can carry it, the pictures on his shoulder or in front of him. V'chein hamolich et hateven, and likewise one who transports straw. Lo yafshil et hakupa la'acharav. He should not place the tub or the box behind him, because again, that would be the normal way of pulling it, dragging it. Aval meviahu biado, but rather he carries it in an unusual fashion with his hand.
I've seen most workers carry things on their shoulders.
Right, we're going to get to that in a slightly different example. Okay, think the case that the Gemara is going to give us shortly is, sometimes remember the old pictures, not just in olden times. I think even Tevye and that time period, and okay, water carriers. They would have some sort of like a piece of wood that was cut around the neck piece, so it slid on their neck, but then they would carry it over their shoulders, right? And then they would have 2 pails of water, okay, or milk or whatever, okay? So we can think of that as another example of.
And they never had neck problems.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, but the Mishnah goes on here. Umadchilin ba'aremat hatevan. Okay, we can put this straw in a place if we need it, okay, for storage in a pile of existing straw. Avalo be'etzim shebamuktzah. But they can't store that straw in the wood long-term storage backyard area, okay? And that's what the word shebamuktzah here. In other words, it really means, remember, muktzah really means something that's set aside. So it's a storage area that's set aside in the back of the house, in their backyard, that's for long-term storage. So our Gemara, Tana, says a Braita, im efshar l'shanot, if it's impossible on Yom Tov to change, right? Mutar, it's permitted. What's permitted to carry, then it's permitted to carry it, okay, or transport it in the normal manner. Itkin Rava b'Mechoza, and Rava established the following takana in the city of Mechoza. Didaru b'duchka, if he carries it with difficulty, ledro baragla, let him carry it with a pitchfork, right? So pitchfork here really means that kind of wooden, I don't call it a yoke, but it's like, like I described before, over the shoulder and things like that, okay? Ledaro baragla, if he carries it normally with this pitchfork kind of thing, ledaro ba'agra, he says he should carry it with a shoulder pole. In other words, 2 people carrying it with the item between them on one pole. The daru ba'agra, if they normally carry it with this shoulder pole, the dro ba'achpa, let him carry it with a handheld pole. The daru ba'achpa, if he normally carries it with the handheld pole, nifros sudra aluyai, let him wrap a scarf or something around it and sort of like carry it by throwing it over his shoulder, kind of thing, right? Ve'im lo efshar, and if that's not all possible, share, then it's permitted to carry it in the normal manner. The amar mar, as the master said, im efshar l'shanot, it's impossible to change it, mutar, it is permitted. Okay, now, amar le Rav
So you can
Chanan.
do more work. So you can do more work as long as it's a change of fashion. So that even though you're doing more work on the hog, it's okay.
That's the question. That's the question. If it's going to create greater exertion on the chag, that's not appropriate. And so in that case, it would be better to go back to using the normal weekday way method than creating a greater exertion on the chag. Okay? good question. Okay, so let's go on then. Amar le Rav Chanan bar Rabba le Rav Ashi, and more Rabbanan, and the rabbis therefore say, Kama de efshar l'shenuye, mishaninin biyom hatava. However great it is for us to change, in other words, make a shinui, right? That is appropriate to do on Yom Tov. Vaha, so the Gemara then questions, right? So the Rav Ashi, okay, in his discussion with Rav Chanan bar Rabba, Rav Chanan bar Rabba is going to challenge him and say, Vaha hani nashe, what about these women, the chameleon chatzavaihu, that they fill their buckets with water, maya, on biyomotava, with water. In other words, they go to the stream, they go to the brook, they fill their buckets, and then they carry it back on Yom Tov. V'lo kam mishanayim, and they don't, they do so without modifying or changing their practices. V'lo amrinan laho v'lo mideh, and we don't, excuse me, we don't say anything about it. In other words, we don't chastise or rebuke them.
I think a lot of people have also adopted this thing of using a sheenli for things which are not appropriate on Shabbos.
Could be. Let's see. Amarle, so Ravashi, responds, Mishum delo efshar, because maybe it's not possible for them to make a shinui. And he gives some examples. Heichel aved, how should they do? In other words, you want them to do a shinui? What are you going to suggest? The malya bechatzva rabba, that they should fill a large bucket. Timle bechatzva zuta, instead they should fill a small bucket. Kam mifsha behilucha. This is going to create additional walking for them. A smaller bucket, they're going to have to bring back and forth more times. The malya bechatzva zuta, to fulfill a large bucket. Timle bechatzva rabba.
Zuta is small.
That's what I meant. The malya bechatzva zuta, to fill with a small bucket. Timle bechatzva rabba, that maybe you're suggesting they should use a large bucket instead of a small one. Kamafshe b'masui. This is going to increase their burden, right? If they do a small bucket, right? I mean a large bucket instead of a small bucket.
They have to go back and
Right.
forth.
Right? Techaseye benichtama. Say you're going to cover the bucket with a wooden lid. Zimnin denafil va'ate la'atuye. Maybe the wooden lid is going to fall off, and then they'll have to carry it on Yom Tov or on Shabbos. Taktire, tie it down. Zimnin demafsik va'ate lemiktare. That maybe the cover is going to break, and then they're going to perform it. So they're going to have to tie it on Yom Tov for Shabbos, which is not acceptable. Tifros sudra aluye, to wrap it in some sort of scarf or handkerchief, right? Right. What happens with the open bucket? Zimnin dimitamish. Perhaps it's going to become soaked with water. B'maya. Va'ateli de schita. And then the women will they'll squeeze it out. And that's also a forbidden malacha, right? Hilkach lo efshar. Therefore, says Rav Ashi, that's why it's not possible to make a change there. New piece. Amarle Rabba bar Rav Chani Labai. So he raises another point. Tnan. We learned in a Mishnah, Ein mitapchin. We don't clap hands. Ve'ein misafkin. And we don't slap our thighs. Ve'ein mirakdim. And we don't dance. We don't do all of these things in Yom Tov. Va'idna, and yet today, the kachazinin, the avdan hachi. We see that people do these things on Yom Tov. V'lo amrinim laho v'lo midi. And we don't say anything. We don't rebuke them, right? Chastise them. Amarle, and Abaye answers, ulata'amech, and according to your line of reasoning, had amar Rava, where Rava once said, lo litiv inish apuma de lichaya, that a person should not sit at the edge of a alleyway where the lechi, it marks the difference between the private domain and the public domain. Dilma megan der le chayfetz. Perhaps some sort of object of theirs will roll from the private domain to the public domain. Right? Va'ate la'atuye. Dalet amos b'rishus harabi. And the result will be that they will carry it, in this case for amos in the rishus harabi. Right? So again, the challenge is raised. Vaha hani nashe, dishkalin chatzavayu, va'azlan v'yadvan apuma de mabua, v'lo amrinan laho v'lo mide. But what about these women, he says, who take their baskets, their buckets, thank you, va'azlan, and then they come and walk, and they sit at the mouth of the alleyway, and we don't say anything, right? We don't rebuke them. Ella rather says, so this is Abaye's answer. Hanach lehem liYisrael. Enough regarding what decrees and the rebuking of the Jewish people. Mutav shehiyu shogagin va'al yihiyu mezidin. Better that they observe something and don't do so as a shogeg, as an being unaware of the potential issue, then inform them, and they're going to do it anyway, and then they'll be doing it b'mezid. Okay, so this is a important concept, right?
So clapping.
Okay,
There's a lot
so
of clapping going on. Yes,
okay, well that's true, but the implication is that some people are aware of the halacha, that normal clapping like you do weekday, okay, and so on Shabbos, if they're going to clap, they go like this instead of like this. Do it as a shinui, okay? All right, so what happens? So hachanami here too, he says, hanach lehem liYisrael. Set aside whatever comments you have, criticisms, etc., Jewish people. Mutav shiyu shogagin va'al yiyu mezidin. Better that they do these acts as an act of shogeg, of mistake, okay, erroneously, without intent, than they do it with intent. So the Gemara is now going to explore this concept in a little more detail, right? Vahani mili, and these words, in other words, this idea of better be shogeg than mezid, b'derabanan, that would apply to a rabbinical enactments. Aval b'deoraita, but Torah enactments, lo, it shouldn't apply to those. And the Gemara then responds, velohi, but that's not the case. Lo shna b'deoraita, velo shna b'derabanan. There's no difference whether it's a Torah enactment or a rabbinical enactment. Lo amrinan laho velo mide. We don't say anything to him. Daha tosefet Yom HaKippurim deoraitahu. Why? Because we see an example. In other words, you can prove that it's not just rabbinic mandated items by the following example. Let's take the fact that we have this additional time before the start of Yom Kippur, where people are supposed to refrain from eating. And that's a Torah required mandate, right? Deoraitahu va'achle v'shatu ad shechashecha v'lo amrinan laho v'lo midi. And people really do, in normal practice, eat up till the eat and drink up till almost dark, and we don't say anything. We don't rebuke them. Okay. Now, coming back to our Mishnah. Okay, where do we put that straw? Right? Okay.
Isn't it something, I don't know, you say you rebuke, or they show a difference, they differentiate between rabbinic and
It's suggested, but that's not the case, he said.
Oh, they say it's not the case.
Right, that's not
Because
the
you
case.
should not differentiate.
Right, because he takes the example of the Tosefet Yom Kippur, which is Torah mandated, and say, but we still don't rebuke
I was
people
gonna
then.
show, there are certain cases where we show preference to the Torah mandate.
Correct,
However,
case.
it shows that you're not showing as much respect to the rabbinic laws,
Right.
which is not so.
Not the case, not appropriate, right? Okay, so back in our Mishnah, it said umatchilin baremat hateven, that we can begin. In other words, initially put that straw into a pile of existing straw, right? Amar Rav Kahan. Excuse me. Says Rav Kahana, Zot Omeret, this seems to say, Matchilin ba'otzar tchila, that it's permissible to take things from a storage, okay, a storehouse, a storage unit, okay, initially. In other words, not b'di'evet, not after the fact, but l'chatchila. Mani, according to whom? Rabbi Shimon he. This seems to be according to the view of Rabbi Shimon. Why? Delip le muktzah, because he does not hold by what we're going to call the expanded concept of muktzah. What do we mean by the expanded concept? We're saying something that is not mukhan for Yom Tov, we consider muktzah, set aside, and therefore cannot be used. Okay? So we're saying that it appears that Rabbi Shimon does not hold from that expanded concept of muktzah. Okay? This was a good note, a good place for the art scroll. I pointed this out as well. That this idea of that in a note in art scroll points out there are different kinds of muktzah. Okay, so for example, one might be muktzah mechamat kis. Okay, you wouldn't let somebody handle a particular kli, a particular instrument, because you're as an artisan, as a craftsman, you're concerned that they could damage your utensil. Okay, so therefore that is an example of something that is set aside. Muktzah cannot be handled, okay? As opposed to other kinds of muktzah, right? So here, this is an expanded concept of muktzah, where we're saying that unless something is mukhan, available, prepared, mentally at least, in advance to be used on Yom Tov.
That's a general concept.
Okay, yeah, well, but it's a broader understanding of muktzah, because we're going to see now in just a minute, the Gemara is going to try to clarify what we mean by that. Okay, so what happens? Right, so we said it would appear that Rabbi Shimon does not hold by this expanded or broader concept of muktzah. Ema Sefer. But I would say, look what happened at the end of our Mishnah. It says there, Aval lo be'etzim sheba muktzah, that you can't put this straw with the wood that's in the long-term storage backyard area, right? So the Gemara says, Eta'en la Rabbi Yehuda, de'it le muktzah. Then I will teach it according to Rabbi Yehuda, who does hold with the expanded, broader concept of muktzah. So he says, no. What's the issue? Hacha ba'arze ba'asuche askina. Now, when we're talking about wood, we're talking about cedar tree wood and female cedar tree wood, first trees, right? Is what we're talking about. De muktzah mechamat chisron kis, because they are an expensive kind of wood, okay, and therefore they would only be used for certain special things and not, for example, for kindling, okay? So what happens? Va'afilu Rabbi Shimon modeh, and even Rabbi Shimon would acknowledge the status of muktzah for that particular kind of wood, because he does hold in muktzah mechamat mechisron kis. So now the another Gemara continues. Ikadematne la asefa. There are those who teach it then on the end piece, where it says aval lo be'etzim sheba muktzah, not with wood that are in the backyard long-term storage. Amar Rav Kahana. And Rav Kahana says, Zot merit ein matchilin ba'otzar tchila. That seems to therefore say that we are not permitted initially to remove things from a storehouse or a storage area on Yom Tov, right? Because why? It would not be muchan. It would not be something that we considered available or prepared for use on the holiday. Mani, according to whom? Rabbi Yehuda. That would therefore be, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the itle muktzah, that says that he does hold by muktzah.
Suppose a special occasion arises where you need something from the store.
Okay, let's see if the Gemara addresses that. Okay, let's take a specific example. I have guests and I don't have enough wine available immediately in my house. Could I therefore go on Yom Tov to the storage area where I keep my wine to get a bottle of wine? What do you think the answer is going to be?
Yes.
The answer is going to be yes, in that particular case, because of the presence of the guests. Okay? The itle muktzah. Ema reisha matchilin ba'arimat hateven. Therefore, I would say with the beginning part of the Mishnah, it refers to placing this straw on the pile of straw. Okay? But wait a second, says the Gemara. Ete'en l'Rabbi Shimon, the itle muktzah. But I would teach it maybe according to Rabbi Shimon, who doesn't hold then by muktzah. Gemara answers, Hatam bativna saya. No, we were talking about rotten or decayed straw. But how can you say that's muchan? Tivne saya. What do you mean decayed or rotten straw? Ha chazi latina. No, that straw is worthy of being used for making cement or bricks. The itle kotzim, answers the Gemara. No, it can't even be used for that because it's got thorns. So you can't handle it to make cement, because what do you have to do? You have to mix the cement with your hands, with your feet, whatever it is, and therefore you can't do it. Thus, that straw is only viable for kindling. Okay, and therefore would it be considered muchan? Perhaps, right? Because you might need it to heat up food in Yom Tov. Okay, we get to a new Mishnah now on Amud Beis, right? The following Mishnah says, Ein notlin etzim min hasukah. Okay, and we're not talking about the holiday sukkah, but we're talking about a hut in general. Okay, we cannot take wood away from this hut on Yom Tov. Ela min hasamuchla, but we may take wood that's around it, near it, okay, for Yom Tov. Right? Now, what wood are we talking about? Ma'ishna min hasukah delo. So what's unique or different about a hut that we can't take its wood? Okay, here we have to come back to an older example of a Gemara that we learned. What kind of roof did these huts have? They had a thatched roof. And how was the roof thatched? Well, you took straw, you took reeds, and you placed it on one angle, and then you took another row of reeds and put it on top, but going the opposite direction. Okay? So theoretically, I might think, well, why couldn't I just take reeds from the top of the upper level and use that wood?
Use it for another purpose.
Use it for another purpose. Okay? Why can't I do it on Yom Tov? The kasater ahala, because you are destroying or dismantling a building. Right? Min hasamuchla. But we said we could take it from that wood that was nearby. Nami kasatar ahala. Maybe there too, you're going to be destroying or dismantling. Excuse me. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. And so he says, Mai samuch. What do we mean when we say that it's nearby? Samuch ledafnot. It's wood that is near the walls. Now, Rav Menashe Amar, he says something else. Afilu tema b'she'ein samuch l'dafno. Even if you say it's not near the walls. Kitanya hahi, when this brighter was taught, what was it referring to? Ba'asuriyata. We were referring to bundles of reeds that were still tied together. Okay, and because they were still tied together, they were not actually part of the roof and therefore could still be utilized for another purpose.
I thought on Shabbos, you can dismantle stuff. I mean, you can theoretically, no?
No.
It's only bone.
Right, that's part of, well, bone is the one side, right? The opposite side is satar, dismantling.
Yeah.
That's the point.
That's
So they're
one of
both-
the malachas.
They're both malachas, right? In fact, we've got the book here, the Lamed Tet Malachas. It's a 4 or 5 volume thing that gives
Yeah.
all the discussion. Outstanding sefer. Tanya Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef. He says, Kame de Rabbi Yochanan. He taught before Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chia, the following. Ein notlim etzim min hasukah ela min hasamuch la. We don't remove or take wood from a hut unless it's near it. Rabbi Shimon matir. However, Rabbi Shimon permitted it. Vishavim, but they both agreed. B'sukat hachag, in the holiday sukkah, right? B'chag, during the holiday, she'asura, that even that wood is forbidden to be taken. Ve'im hitna alei, but if one made a stipulation, a condition, hakol lefi tna'o, then everything is according to that condition. Okay? And we're going to see an example. The Rabbi Shimon matir, and we say that Rabbi Shimon permits taking that wood. V'hakasatar ahala. But didn't we just say that that's like dismantling the facility, the place? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Hacha b'sukkah nofelet askinen. We're talking about a holiday sukkah that is falling apart. That's what we're dealing with. The Rabbi Shimon Latame, and Rabbi Shimon follows his reasoning, delete le muktzah, that he doesn't accept an expanded concept of muktzah. Titania, as we learned in a Braita, motar hashemen shebaner v'shebekara, the excess oil that is in a lamp or in a bowl, right, that was used for light, and now that light, that fire, that candle, whatever lights, call it oil, with a wick in it, and now that wick has gone out, asur, it's forbidden. The Rabbi Shimon atir, but Rabbi Shimon disagrees with Tana Kama and says it's permitted. Mi dami, so the Gemara asks, wait a second, are these two situations really comparable? Hatam, there in the example of the lamp, the nair, or the kara. Adam yoshev umitzapeh imatai tichbe neiro. A person sits and waits. At what point will the candle or the light go out? In other words, he hasn't taken his mind off that oil, thinking, oh, well, at some point this light will go out, and that excess oil I can use for another purpose, right? But here in the case of the sukkah, Adam Yoshev umitzapeh ematai tipol sukkato, a person's going to sit and wait around and think, gee, when is my sukkah going to fall down? Okay? No. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. And so he says again, Hacha b'sukkah ra'o'ua, a dilapidated sukkah, askinan. Deme'etmo da'ate eluye, because even the day before, he sees the condition of this hut, all right? And it's dilapidated, it's falling apart already. And so he's already thinking the day before, Yontif, gee, if I need extra wood, I have it here.
The phrase before Yontif.
Yeah.
It's
Demi
because-
etmo, from the day before. Right? Okay. New piece in our Mishnah.
So it's not because it's sukkah, it's because of any Yontif.
Anyhow, right.
You can't. Don't
Right.
move it.
V'shavin b'sukat hechag b'chag. And we said they agreed on the holiday sukkah regarding the holiday itself, shehi asura, that taking any of the wood is forbidden. V'im hitne ale, but if one made a condition, a stipulation, hakol lefitna'o, that everything is according to his condition. Umi mahani batna'ai, and do we really permit the use of such stipulations, conditions? Asks the Gemara. V'ha'amar Rav Sheshet mishum Rabbi Akiva. And didn't Rav Sheshet say in the name of Rabbi Akiva, Minayin la'atzei sukkah she'asurin kol shiva? How do we know that the wood of a holiday sukkah is forbidden all 7 days? Shene Amar, as it says in the pasuk, Chag HaSukkot Shivat Yamim Lashem. The holiday of Sukkot, 7 days for Hashem. Vitanya, and we teach in a Braita, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera Omer, he says as follows, Minayin Shekashem Shechal Shem Shamayim Al HaChagiga. How do we know that just that the name of heaven, in other words, that it's for Hashem, is applicable to the Chagiga, the holiday offering, Kach Chal Shem Shamayim Al HaSukkah, that likewise, just as the holiday offering is consecrated, so the Sukkah holiday, Chag, the Sukkah abode is also consecrated. Talmud Lomar, says the pasuk, Chag HaSukkot Shivat Yamim Lashem, that the holiday of Sukkot 7 days for Hashem. Machag Lashem, the same way the holiday, and therefore its offering is for Hashem, right? Af Sukkah Lashem. So likewise, the abode, the place, the building. Amar Rav Menashe, Berei the Rava, says Rav Menashe Berei the Rava, the following, Seifa eta ein l'sukkah da alma. Okay, the end. Okay, I would teach in regards to an abode in general. Aval sukkah de mitzvah, but the sukkah where there's the mitzvah of the holiday, lo mahane batna'a. There we don't permit any stipulations, right? The sukkah de mitzvah lo. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. Do we say that with regards to the holiday sukkah, we don't allow any stipulations? Not really? Vahatanya. Haven't we learned though elsewhere in the Braita? Sachacha bekehilchata. If one put the schach according to the law on the sukkah. Va'atra bekarmim. And he began to decorate it with some embroidered or colored cloths. Ubistinim hametsuyarim, and drawn or colored sheets. Vitala ba'egozim, and he hung as his decorations nuts, right, shkedim, and almonds, afarsikim, and peaches, verimonim, and pomegranates, uparchile anavim, and clusters of grapes, yenot, bottles of wine, shmanim, and bottles of oil, v'saltot, and containers of fine flour, va'atrot shibalim, and even bundles of wheat. Asur lehistapek mehen, one is forbidden to make use of them, ad motzei yom tov ha'acharon shel chag, until the end of the last day of the holiday. Ve'im hitna alehim. But if he made a stipulation, a condition about them, hakol lefitna'o, then everything is according to his condition. Now, Abai Varava, the two of them, the Amre Travayu, Ba'omer, were saying, Eini Bodel Mehem Kol Ben Hashmashot. If a person makes a statement that I don't differentiate from them, okay, now before the twilight, in other words, what does that mean? Delo chale kedusha alayhu, that therefore there is no sanctity on any of these decorations. Okay, the sukkah is consecrated, but the decorations are not, especially the foodstuffs that he used. Therefore,
The exception is the etrog.
what?
The exception is the etrog. If somebody from another town needs one, then they can take the etrog.
Aval atzei sukkah, but the wood of the sukkah, the chala kedusha alayhu, on which sanctity does, I want to say fall, but does descend, so to speak, on them, at katseye l'shiva, that wood is set aside for all 7 days. So therefore that wood is muktzah, not to be used. Right? Umay shnameha. So the Gemara now asks, so how is that
But
different?
It could have been, no, right?
What?
He could have,
He can't make a
Stipulated.
tanai on that wood.
he can't.
No, not on the wood of the sukkah. The itmar. Okay, so what is so unique about this? As it said, Hifrish Shiva Etrogim, the Shivat Hayamim. Let's say someone set aside 7 etrogim for each of the 7 days of the holiday. Amar Rav, and Rav says, Kol echad ve'echad yotzei ba v'ochla alter. One could each morning take a different etrog, use it for benching arba minim, and then eat it immediately. V'Rav Asi Amar, but Rav Asi says, Kol echad yotzei ba v'ochla lemachar, that each one could fulfill the arba minim requirement for benching, okay, but cannot eat it till the next day. Namely, Rav Asi is saying, since you made it consecrated by using it as the mitzvah that morning, you can't eat it all the rest of that same day, but you could eat it the next day. Hatam demifsaku leilot miyamim kol chada v'chada yoma mitzvah ba'apei nafshehu. Okay, why do we say, what was the attitude that you could eat it each day? Why? Because there, in that case, there was a distinction made by the nights from the days, and that each day then was a separate mitzvah in and of itself. Okay, so that was part of their argument. If the day was holy, you can't eat that. Rabbi Yossi would say you can't eat it till the next day. But here, regarding the wood, the lo mifsaku leilot miyamim, where there is no difference between days and nights, because we have to dwell in the sukkah and eat in the sukkah days and nights, right? Kulhu yome kechada yoma arich dedami. It's all like one single long day, and that's what it's similar to. And therefore, the wood is consecrated; it can't be used. But those other items, if there's a tanai, they could be. And we'll stop right there. And we'll pick up the new with the Mishnah tomorrow on Lamed Aleph. Okay? All right. How is Yontif, Steve? Good?
Wonderful, thank you. It was exhausting, but wonderful.
All right. Regards to Nina. Take care.
You too. How was yours?
Good. Good.
That's great.
So long.
The best.